There was a time, and not all that long ago, when everyone had a hobby or favourite pastime, and birdwatching was very popular indeed. Along with the philatelists and their stamps, the campanologists and their bells, the ornithologists busy watching the birds were numerous, with virtually the entire population of Great Britain able to identify the majority of common garden birds. But with technological advances and around-the-clock multimedia entertainment, many of these very traditional pleasures have been forgotten. Even so, as the stresses and strains of 21st century life have left people overworked and desperately in need of relaxation, the delights of such activities, birdwatching in particular, are enjoying a surge in popularity. What's more, with little or no specialist equipment needed to get started, it looks as if this is one trend that is set to continue. For many of us, putting out food scraps for the birds during the cold winter months will have been our first experience of interacting with our feathered friends. These memories, created in childhood, will be very special, and the enthusiasm to build on our recollections is without doubt within us all, and it really doesn't matter whether you live at the heart of a busy city or amongst the rolling hills of the countryside. Birdwatching is equally as delightful. The species you see will vary, as they will across the British Isles, but the principles remain the same wherever you happen to be birdwatching. As our interest in birds develops, as it inevitably will, there's a great deal to be discovered. In this programme, which is dedicated to using various methods of feeding to attract the widest possible range of bird species to your garden, you can see for yourself how it's done. Historically, it's thought that the first recorded feeding of wild birds in Britain was by Saint Cerf, a 6th century holy man. This monk had tamed a wild robin by feeding it, and although the Italian Saint Francis of Assisi is credited with being the patron saint of animals, it would seem that it was Cerf that actually got birdwatching started. Nevertheless, it took until the Victorian era for this practice to really become popular, and in the winter of 1890 people were actively encouraged to put food out for the birds. This evidently continued as time went on, because by 1910 even the magazine Punch declared that feeding birds was a national pastime. There are many ways for us to follow on in this tradition, and scattering crumbs will undoubtedly work as well as it always has done. But you can really improve your chances of targeting more specific species with a little know-how. Even if you've never put out food for the birds before, your curiosity will no doubt have been aroused on a number of occasions. Maybe you'll have spotted a robin looking for worms in your garden, or a family of blue tits nesting in a convenient tree, or perhaps you've seen a bird that you can't identify at all. The fascination of catching a glimpse of the natural world in this way will get you thinking about the wildlife you can attract to your garden, and with a little research you'll be able to confidently list the differences between even the most similar looking birds. To begin with, you may be perfectly happy scattering food on the ground, but using feeders and bird tables to elevate your offerings will be a great way to attract more birds to your garden, as many species would simply be too wary to feed at ground level. They'll still take a while to get confident and begin feeding, but once the trust has formed between the birds and your garden, you'll be seeing more and more of our feathered friends on a daily basis. There are so many aspects to consider before going out and buying feeders and related equipment. But do try not to get bogged down with facts and figures, just keep it simple. Firstly, decide which birds you'd most like to see in your garden, and consider whether they're resident species or migratory visitors. It's no good trying to entice house martins in winter, as they'll have long since travelled south to warmer climes. You'll probably need to do a little research next to discover what your favourite species like to eat. Whether it's the beautiful greenfinch that has a soft spot for seeds, or the glossy blackbird that adores juicy worms. Knowing what to put out will make all the difference. Also, it's worth remembering that not all birds will eat from the same kind of feeder. For example, the upside-down feeding siskin will fare better with nuts that are hanging, while the chaffinch that has a beak perfectly adapted for picking up seeds prefers to eat at ground level. Once you know what you're trying to achieve, the next step will be to consider the type of feeders that are available, and you'll most certainly be able to match those with your own particular garden, and they range from the traditional and elegant to designer-inspired and contemporary. Here are a few questions that might be worth asking to help you decide what will work best for you. First and foremost, you really need to decide how many feeders you're happy to take care of. Apart from putting them up, which can be time-consuming, and moving them around until the birds are happy with their location, you also need to put aside time for cleaning your feeders on a regular basis to reduce the risk of disease for the birds and the arrival of unwelcome visitors such as rats. Next, consider the types of feeder you want to hang in your garden, because there are plenty of options. For example, suet provides a wonderful source of winter nutrition, and whether you prefer a suet basket or a tube feeder is entirely up to you. Also, you do need to consider carefully the space you have, because there are feeders that you can hang on a pole or attach to your windowsills that'll be just as effective, so long as you make sure they are easy fill varieties if accessibility is an issue. Last but not least, think carefully about your budget, because not only have you got to buy your feeders, you also have to fill them. The size is an important factor, as keeping a lot of large feeders topped up can be pricey. Don't forget to shop around, just as you would for any other kind of product. There are many specialist pet stores and garden centres that'll sell bird food and paraphernalia, but there are also some excellent online suppliers where you can find some very competitive prices. Where you can, it's best to invest in a quality feeder right from the beginning, as they'll last longer and reward you with years of bird-watching enjoyment. There are plenty of carefully designed feeders to choose from. There are certainly things that you can look out for. The seed mix feeders, for example, tend to have a little ledge for the finches and tits to perch on whilst eating. Here you can see a white dove trying to eat from this domed seed feeder, but it's not ideal for a larger bird. Putting your feeders at a higher level around your garden will attract the smaller songbirds and keep the bigger birds at ground level, where they'll fare better, although it doesn't necessarily mean they won't have a try, just like the white dove, for such tasty treats. Hanging feeders tend to come with a hook attached, So purchasing accessories can be a great help when it comes to putting your foods out at different levels. Adjustable poles are perfect for varying height and come in all different shapes, sizes and attachments. They're also a great way of protecting the birds from predators such as the neighbouring cats, keeping them well out of harm's way. So, without further ado, we'll begin by looking at the different ways in which you can feed the birds in your garden. In our health-conscious age, a good old-fashioned steamed suet pudding is often frowned upon, but it is the ultimate comfort food, especially in the colder weather, and for the birds, suet is a wonderful source of energy that's perfectly permissible. Suet is a solid, hard type of fat located around the kidneys of animals, with beef suet being the most readily available. It is a great treat for feeding birds as it's high in calories and can be purchased in various ready-to-use forms. There are approximately 850 calories per 100 grams of suet, which in a harsh winter could make the difference between smaller species living or dying. Putting out suet-based feeds in the winter months will let the birds know that your garden is their new safe haven, and they don't have to waste more energy searching for food. Species like the coaltit will particularly appreciate suet because they have a high metabolic rate and can consume up to a third of their body weight in food per day. As your birdwatching progresses, you'll find the more you know about a species, the better able you are to cater for its needs. So here's a brief coaltit fact file to get you started. This tiny tit is only 11.5 centimetres in length and looks quite similar to the marsh and willow tit. This bird prefers woodlands, gardens and parks, and when it comes to nesting, a suitable hole in a tree will be their first choice, although a garden nest box might just be selected. Understanding a bird's nesting habits will be very useful, as this is a time when they'll be really grateful for a steady food supply, with many hungry mouths to feed. In the coaltit's case, there may be 2 clutches of about 10 eggs during the breeding season. This starts in mid-April, with the female making a cup-shaped nest of roots, moss, wood, dead leaves and other soft materials. Once the eggs hatch after just over a fortnight, both adults feed the young, who then leave the nest after about 18 to 20 days. In the wild, coaltits feed on insects and seeds, but they'll definitely favour tasty blocks of suet, and as you can buy varieties that contain dried insects, seeds and nuts, you can experiment to see which are the most popular, and it won't just be the coaltits that come flocking in. You can also make your own suet-based cakes, adding ingredients of your choice, which can also be put in blocks or spread on the tree trunks around your garden. A perfect container to put your block of suet out in is a steel spiral feeder. With no lid or fiddly catches to contend with, it couldn't be simpler. And of course, the sturdy spirals give the birds a safe perch to hold on to while they're enjoying a veritable feast. Whatever feeders you're using, they should in general be located close to natural cover, as many birds prefer to have somewhere to escape to. This is why spiral feeders vary in dimension, so that you can hang them in a variety of locations. But if you're prone to being visited by squirrels, you may want to select feeders that are squirrel resistant. Should you find that the bigger birds are eating all the suet and not letting the smaller species get a look in, choosing a feeder of smaller dimensions should help give the songbirds a chance of feasting on the tasty suet, leaving the stronger, larger birds to try elsewhere. Another favourite high-energy feast with many bird species are fat balls, which are also suet-based, and combined with sunflower seeds and cereals are packed into their characteristic spherical shape. Fat balls usually arrive in a nylon mesh, which ideally needs to be removed before placing them in your feeder. It really isn't a good idea to hang the fat ball up in the mesh, as the smaller birds could get caught up in it, so purchasing a feeder will ensure the bird's safety. And here's another fact file for a delightful little bird that'll definitely appreciate your efforts. The long-tailed tit is a big fan of tasty fat balls, and although this bird is up to 15 centimetres in length, its tail makes up most of that measurement, and it only weighs a feather like 7 to 9 grams. You'll find them living in hedges or bushes and woodland during the winter months. So, if you're lucky enough to have a suitable garden, a long-tailed tit won't be too far away, especially with fat balls on offer. Although they're great insect eaters, they're also more than happy to feast on seed mixes and peanuts. Again, at nesting time, the long-tailed tit will be especially active in its search for food, after building a wonderful, unique ball-shaped nest using moss and spiders' webs, disguised with lichen and lined with feathers. Their breeding season begins in March and goes through to July, and in this time they'll lay one brood of 8 to 12 tiny white and red spotted eggs, and once they've hatched, the nest can be very busy indeed. This very contemporary-looking metal holder with circular holes that you see the long-tailed tits feeding on here is perfect for small fat balls, holding up to 5 of them. With its easy-to-pop cap at the top for refilling, the circles are the perfect size for our feathered friends to feed from, while being pretty squirrel-proof. Lovely as squirrels may be to look at, they can get through an awful lot of food very quickly. So do keep in mind that buying squirrel-proof feeders may save you a fortune in the long run. However, that said, squirrels can be extremely resourceful, and if they can knock a feeder to the ground and pull the lid off it, they will. So, with your suet feeders safe from squirrel attacks, you'll be delighted by the variety of visiting species that'll arrive to partake of this popular food. The long-tailed tit and the coal tit certainly won't be the only members of this family of birds that'll make the most of these feeders, with blue tits and great tits appearing regularly too, along with all manner of finches, or even a nuthatch once your feeders have become well established. And you're not limited to hanging fat balls either, because they can also be crumbled between the fingers and scattered on ground feeders or bird tables to attract the bigger species like starlings, blackbirds, jackdaws and doves. For many people, the garden bird table will be at the heart of their feeding station. And even if you begin by hanging feeders from tree branches and poles, as your interest progresses, this will definitely be a worthwhile investment. Not only will you be able to keep the birds happy with a wide variety of foods, they'll also provide shelter if you choose one with a roof. There really is a remarkable range of bird tables available, and depending upon what garden space you have at your disposal, you can take your pick. But fear not, even if you have a small garden or no garden at all, you can still attract the birds using a wall-mounted bird table. Even so, the most popular bird table is the traditionally styled version, standing about 2 meters high, with or without the protection of a roof. They often come as an easy self-assembly pack, with instructions and fittings provided. Some will have an easy-to-lift-out plastic tray, which is effortless to clean. But if you pick one without this, make sure you still brush away the debris every time to put out new foods. Regular cleaning of your bird table is vitally important, and although hot soapy water will do the job adequately, if you want to be extra careful, your bird food supplier will generally sell an animal-friendly disinfecting spray that's suitable for this particular job. Wooden bird tables may look more natural as they blend into the environment of the garden, but metal or plastic ones are also available if you're looking for something that's easier to clean. And of course, the smoother and straighter the post, then the harder it'll be for cats or squirrels to climb. If you choose a bird table with a roof, it'll help to keep the rain off the food, and for these smaller birds, there'll be no danger of aerial predators attacking them. Location will be very important, and you may well find that you have to move your bird table around a little to find where the birds prefer to feed. One really good tip is to make sure there are shrubs, tree branches, or even washing lines close by, as you'll notice that birds really do have a pecking order. They'll queue up to take their turn, and particularly with squabbling tits and finches, this is fascinating to watch. Also, trying to keep the bird table away from nesting areas, whether natural trees or nesting boxes that you've put up. Encouraging feeding under the nesting territories of other birds will not be a wise move. Even the smaller species will get very territorial when they have chicks to care for. Bird tables are readily available from garden centres and online. An ideal size is 3 to 4 square feet, because if it's any smaller, it'll mean that fewer birds will be able to feed at the same time. It's also worth remembering that you can hang various feeders from your bird table as well, which means you can have a wide selection of foods that'll suit all manner of species. And here are a few fact files for some of the most regular visitors to our gardens. The starling is similar in size to a blackbird, and about 22 centimetres in length, and weighs between 75 and 90 grams. You'll see as many in urban settings as you will amongst the rural landscape, with them being regular visitors to farmland, parks, gardens, and even sewage farms. This lively bird will readily take to artificial nests, such as holes in walls or trees, and the breeding season is between April and May. There can be 2 broods in this time, consisting of 4 to 7 pale blue-green eggs. The nests are made by the male in order to attract a mate, and then the female completes the nest by lining it with grass and other soft vegetation. Interestingly, starlings have been known to lay their eggs in the nests of other starlings, and if this goes unnoticed, the female will raise them as her own, but if she realises, the eggs will be rejected. Starlings will eat just about anything, but they are big fruit fans, and as well as scattering on your bird table, you can fill a feeder with chopped up apples or pears. One good tip here is to pick up any windfalls during the autumn, which you can then pack away carefully, keeping them somewhere cool, so that you'll be able to offer this treat all through the colder winter months. The ideal feeder to put fruit in will have mesh around the outside, so that the birds can easily take small pieces of apple without there being any danger of them choking on whole chunks. The feeder you're looking at here also has a pop-off lid, which means it'll be very easy to refill, something you'll need to do regularly if there are starlings about. And if you happen to have blackbirds visiting regularly, they too will be very partial to fruit of all varieties, as well as insects and worms. The blackbird is a little larger than the starling, weighing between 80 and 125 grams. The breeding season will start in March, and you'll certainly know if there's a nest in your vicinity, as blackbirds become very noisy and aggressive if anything or anyone gets too close. Their nest will be made up of dry vegetation, reinforced with mud, and is built by the female in a shrub or a hedge. She'll lay between 3 and 5 brown, freckled, greenish-blue eggs, and can have up to 4 broods in a season. Both the male and female feed the chicks that will leave the nest about a fortnight after hatching, which is why any regular supply of food will be gratefully received. Bird tables give you the option of putting an array of foods out, but keep in mind what season it is and what birds you're attracting. Household scraps are fine to put out, but there are a few great favourites that'll be extremely popular. Bread is often associated with bird feeding, but the white processed variety has little nutritional value, so it's much better to go for brown, whole grain loaves. Cheese will also be gratefully accepted, and cooked potatoes are perfect for keeping out the winter chills, although chips will often be left untouched. Although we'll talk later more about bird food mixes when we come to seed and nut feeders, any of these can also be scattered on your bird table. Also, don't forget the value of dried fruit, which can be easily put out on your bird table. But remember, if you buy them from a bird food supplier, don't eat them yourself, as the storage of these may not be at the required level standard for human consumption. If you're going to feed currants, sultanas and raisins, using a bird table will be the safest way to do so, as they are actually harmful to cats and dogs. Grapes are very toxic for dogs, and of course these are all different varieties of dried grapes, so beware. And if at Christmas time you have puddings, mince pies and fruitcake leftovers, the same applies. A bird table can also be used as a ground feeder if you don't put it on a pole, or you can actually buy a ready-made ground feeder if you'd rather not scatter your offerings quite so randomly. A ground feeder is a great way of attracting birds, big and small, as many of them will naturally feed at ground level, from blackbirds and thrushes to robins and sparrows. They provide a large area for feeding, and being lightweight they're easy to pick up and bring in so as to discourage those unwanted nighttime visitors. The advantages of using a ground feeder means that your offerings will dry quickly if it rains, will not be buried by snow, and will stay fresh and disease-free. This wooden ground feeder is a great example of one of the many designs you can choose from. It's easy to fill and clean, and has a mesh tray at the bottom so it easily drains during bad weather. There are also raised edges to prevent the food from blowing away. Ground feeders tend to be a few inches from ground level, and this particular one has been placed over a flat surface for easy cleaning. Birds can be messy eaters, and here any debris can be easily swept away. Again, just like with the suet feeder and the bird table, you can experiment to find the best location for the birds, but it's worth keeping it away from shrubs where hidden predators like a stealthy cat might be waiting to pounce. There will be some delightful birds to look out for at ground level, and here are fact files for the pied wagtail and the chaffinch. The pied wagtail is full of character with its wagging tail, despite its small size measuring up to just 18 centimetres in length and weighing between 20 and 27 grams. Their breeding season will be from April until August, so they're going to be busy searching for food for a considerable time. Using thick vegetation or even the disused nests of other species, they'll add leaves, twigs, moss, feathers and hair for lining and lay up to 2 broods a year of between 3 and 5 whitish eggs with dark spots. They'll be attracted to your garden if you've put out such treats as mealworms, pinhead oatmeal, peanut granules, or even grated cheese, all of which can easily be scattered across your ground feeder. This has, of course, been designed so that you can easily see the birds feeding, as well as spotting when it needs refilling. You'll find that your offerings get taken very quickly, but if you buy seed mixes in bulk, it does work out surprisingly economically. Just remember, you need somewhere to keep your supplies that won't attract any less welcome visitors, like rats and mice. The chaffinch will be a great fan of seed mixes at ground level, and here's its fact file. This delightful bird is the most colourful member of the finch family, measuring up to 15 centimetres in length and weighing between 18 and 30 grams. They'll favour hedgerows, gardens and farmland, and nest in bushes or at lower levels in trees, using a construction of grasses decorated with lichen, where they'll lay up to 5 dark green spotted eggs. Enjoying a varied diet of insects and seeds, the chaffinch is actually a fairly easy bird to attract, and this is how it's done. There are plenty of bird food and seed mixes available. For example, you can get a robin mix if you're particularly keen on attracting this delightful species. Nevertheless, buying your seeds separately can be a really good option, as you can devise your own blends rather than buying seeds already mixed. A favourite mix tends to be black sunflower seeds, kibbled maize, Niger seeds and chopped peanuts. The possible seed mix combinations are endless, so you can be as adventurous as you like, or if you prefer, stick to what you know best. And so we come to the classic seed feeders, tubular in shape with portholes at the bottom. This gives the birds their preferred feeding position of facing forwards, like the goldfinch we can see here. And they have perches for the birds to stand on whilst eating. They're really easy to refill with a pop cap on the top, and there's an easy flow to ensure optimum accessibility to the food. Every part of these feeders has been designed with the needs of the birds in mind. But when choosing, try to make sure it's one that keeps the seeds as dry as possible, as this will cut down on your costs, as you won't have to keep replacing the wet ones with fresh. Here's a fact file for the goldfinch, one of the most beautiful of all garden birds, that's similar in size to a blue tit, at about 12 centimetres in length, weighing up to 17 grams. The goldfinch breeds from April to August and can have up to 3 broods of 5 to 6 spotted and streaked bluish eggs in nests that are small and cup-shaped, constructed from wool, moss and grass. This bird's natural food preference will be for insects and seeds. But if you stock your feeders with sunflower hearts, black sunflower seeds, Niger seeds and peanuts, you're very likely to attract them. Don't worry if you don't think you have room for hanging feeders. You can always get versions that attach to your window, which will mean you'll get a really close look at the birds that come and feed. On closer inspection, sunflower seeds are the primary ingredient for the majority of bird mixes. They are flat seeds with an outer coat of black and white stripes, which protects the inner seed that's packed with iron and fibre, and extremely popular with many species. The only downside is that these seeds can be quite messy, as the birds have to bite through the outer shell, which is then dropped to the floor. Even though you might have to do some sweeping up, this food is definitely worth the effort, because it's a great favourite with greenfinches that are always a delight to see. Another all-time favourite seed is the tiny black Niger seed, which is high in energy, keeping the birds healthy and well fed. The oil content of these seeds is also considerable, making it the perfect food for all occasions, from the frenetically busy breeding season right through to the chilly days of winter. Interestingly, it's best not to purchase a specific Niger seed feeder unless you happen to already have finches taking food from your garden, because this could end up being a wasted feeding station. Although plenty of other species really enjoy what is often termed as black gold, they do tend to prefer it blended as part of a seed mix. Here's a fact file for the delightful green finch, a definite fan of the seed feeders that'll keep you entertained for hours with its delightful antiques. This lovely green bird is up to 15 centimetres long and weighs on average between 25 and 32 grams and can be found in most habitats. Their breeding season is from April to August, and they nest in dense hedges and bushes, opting for a cup-shaped construction of grass. With as many as 3 broods a year of 4 to 6 eggs, which are pale with a few dark spots, it's no small wonder these lovely birds are always keen to find a reliable source of food for their young. Another species that your seed feeders are likely to attract will be the house sparrow, a delightful little bird measuring between 14 and 15 centimetres in length that weighs up to 32 grams. Nesting in small colonies, they lay between 3 to 6 eggs that are greyish white with speckled brown and grey markings, and breeding starts in May with as many as 3 broods in a year. It's also worth pointing out that the house sparrow will particularly appreciate high-energy seed mixes that contain grains, especially porridge oats. Scattering porridge oats or naked rolled oats will be ideal for ground feeding. It is also perfect for mixing into your seed feeders, and at approximately 390 calories per 100 grams will be a perfect winter warmer for a variety of species. Look out as well for kibbled maize, another grain that'll also be very popular. But when it comes to feeders, perhaps the most effective of all will be those containing nuts, which are very nutritious as well as being rich in protein and oils, making them of great value, especially during the mating season. However, there is one word of caution here, as you do need to make sure you don't put whole peanuts on a bird table or in a ground feeder while breeding is ongoing, as the chicks could choke if they get hold of them. To avoid this, you can always buy chopped peanut hearts if you want to scatter them, or simply chop the nuts up yourself. To avoid any risk though, it's a good idea to use a nut feeder, as they are actually designed to protect the smaller birds from choking. They have mesh gaps, usually around 6mm wide, which prevent the birds pulling whole nuts through while being large enough to make sure no damage is done to their beaks. If you're in any doubt, you can buy nut feeders that are RSPB approved and of the ideal dimensions. You do also have to be careful about the type of peanuts that you feed to the birds, as surprisingly, those sold for human consumption can be harmful to birds. Those sold by bird food suppliers will be guaranteed aflatoxin-free, because although not a problem for us, this can be fatal for the birds, even in the tiniest quantities. You can have a lot of fun with nut feeders, hanging them in trees as well as from bird tables. If hung lower down, they'll attract smaller birds like the greenfinch and the siskin, but at higher levels it'll attract bigger birds all year round. This silver nut feeder is designed in the shape of a lantern, with an easy-to-pop cap on the top for refilling. A nut feeder like this one is a good choice because it's made of metal, and although more expensive to buy to start with, it could end up being more economical in the long run, as it'll last longer. Also, do look out for useful perches on feeders. The birds will be able to stand safely and eat, or, for the smaller species, they'll be able to take a well-earned rest. Your nut feeders will undoubtedly bring you plenty of new species, and some may be a delightful surprise, like the great spotted woodpecker. So let's take a look at its fact file. This woodpecker is similar in size to a blackbird, measuring up to 23 centimetres in length and weighing between 70 and 90 grams. Nesting will be between April and July, when they'll dig out tree chambers at about 3 metres above the ground, or they'll use specialist nest boxes, so it's worth putting them up if you have suitable trees in your garden. These woodpeckers tend to have one brood of 4 to 7 eggs in a year, with breeding beginning in mid-April. Having looked in detail at fat, seed and nut feeders, it's time to consider a very different kind of offering, guaranteed to get the birds flocking into your garden. What you see here may look like a perfectly ordinary plastic bowl, but it is in fact the perfect live food feeder. You can buy a wonderful range of these feeders. Some will actually attach to your bird table, but so long as you have a container that is smooth-sided, you'll do very well indeed. What you need to ensure is that the birds can see the food clearly, with your worms not able to disappear from sight. It might sound a little gruesome, particularly if you're not too keen on the idea of putting out food that wriggles, but the birds will definitely appreciate being fed worms and insects of various types. One of the most popular live foods used by people feeding birds in their gardens will be the mealworm. And as you can cultivate these at home, it can work out quite economically. Mealworms are a very safe option for your birds as they're vegetarian, and there's no danger of them carrying the potential fatal diseases that can be present in offal-fed maggots. Mini mealworms are also useful for attracting smaller species, and if you really can't face the prospect of live foods, it's possible to buy dried mealworms, and although never quite as effective, they nevertheless make a tasty treat for your garden visitors. As well as mealworms, you'll also find earthworms are very popular indeed, and crickets that are readily available from pet food suppliers, as well as online, will also be very acceptable. Live foods will be an excellent addition to your garden offerings and can be put out all year round. During the breeding season, this will be especially valuable, as even species that normally feed on seeds and nuts will take live foods to feed their young. And you never know, after attracting the great spotted woodpecker, the much rarer lesser spotted woodpecker might just pop in for a feast, not to mention the blackbirds, blue tits and robins that'll be quick to realise that live foods are on the menu. So here are the fact files for our last two species. The delightful blue tit can measure up to 11.5 centimetres in length and weighs between 9 and 12.5 grams. With a fairly long breeding season from March to June, they line their nests with moss, grass and feathers, targeting small natural holes or nesting boxes that have been put out in the garden. They'll have, on average, 2 broods a year of between 7 and 12 eggs, and feeding their young means that you'll see a lot of blue tit activity while they're busy rearing their young. Last but not least, the robin will always be a great fan of live foods, and this sturdy little bird, measuring between 13 and 14 centimetres in length and weighing up to 22 grams, will become very tame as it gets used to visiting your garden. They are known for nesting in some strange places, so if you have regular visits from robins, keep an eye on what they're up to in spring, and it's well worth putting up nesting boxes, as they'll often settle happily for a man-made home. Their nests will be cup-shaped and made from grass and leaves, lined with hair. The eggs are blue and speckled with red spots, and there'll often be 2 broods of 5 to 6 eggs each year, with the breeding season beginning in late March. The only thing you'll quickly discover as you become more accomplished at feeding your garden birds is that you can become totally engrossed in observing them appreciating your efforts. And sadly, our time watching the birds discovering what they really like to eat has now flown by, if you'll pardon the pun. Looking out on this garden covered in snow, you can immediately see why such contributions to the birds' dietary requirements will be so valuable. When conditions are as difficult as this, our offerings can quite literally mean that birds survive through to the spring, when food will again become more plentiful. Hopefully, you'll now confidently be able to put out foods that are suitable for your own particular circumstances, to cater for the birds that are most likely to visit. From the suet and fat ball feeders, right through to your hanging seed and nut feeders, the chances of you making the most of your environment, whether you have a large country garden or a tiny urban backyard, will have increased dramatically. And of course, the best news of all is the fact that once the birds have found you and your feeders, they will return again and again, year after year. Each new brood of fledglings will quickly learn that although there may be no such thing as a free lunch, permitting us to catch a glimpse of them as they empty our feeders is a very small price to pay.